Dave, have I got news for you?
Okay.
You are going to love this. Do you know how in American pop culture, everybody's always saving Christmas? Right?
Yes.
You're not an official cartoon character unless you saved Christmas.
Right.
Mickey Mouse has saved Christmas. Bugs Bunny has saved Christmas. The Flintstones have saved Christmas. The Simpsons have saved Christmas. I think that's the episode we got Santa's Little Helper.
That's right.
Doctor Who has saved Christmas a number of times. You're not official until you've saved. Christmas is the most imperiled holiday on the entire calendar. Jack Skellington has saved Christmas. The VeggieTales have saved Christmas. All of these characters, Ernest has even saved Christmas.
Oh, thank God,
right?
Ernest has saved Christmas, yes.
But nobody spares a thought for Thanksgiving. Nobody is saving Thanksgiving. Has there been a single cartoon character that you can think of that has saved Thanksgiving?
I cannot think of one, no.
For the purposes of this cold open, the answer is none. No cartoon character has ever saved Thanksgiving.
I can wholeheartedly say not a single cartoon character has ever saved Thanksgiving. And where have they been? It has needed Thanksgiving saving.
Nobody saves Thanksgiving until now. This year, Thanksgiving was saved by Ziggy.
No.
Fasten your belts. This is a cold open. This is our year-end show or our year beginning show. I don't know. It's something out there, but holy cats. So, do you remember going all the way back to our Webcomics Weekly days? We had an interview with Tom Wilson Jr. Do you remember?
The son of the creator of Ziggy, right?
That's right.
Yes.
And so Tom Wilson created Ziggy. His son, Tom Wilson II, took over the comic, and we had him on the show to talk about Ziggy. Now, he was a delightful guy.
And I remember he specifically told us how his father had trained him to write Ziggy.
And how did he train him?
Didn't he, like, when they were at a Denny's or something, he would flip over the little paper mat and say, like, hey, let's try to create a comic right now by doing, I don't remember what the action that he did, but it was something like that, right?
So what he did was he drew Ziggy in a situation, and the kid would have to draw something or think of something to get Ziggy out of the situation, right? Right.
And in so doing, they would try to find a joke, right?
Right. So we're in upstate New York. Carolyn has found a gorgeous lake house right on one of the Finger Lakes for us to gather for Thanksgiving. My mother-in-law and my father-in-law were there, along with my brother-in-law and sister-in-law. That would be Carolyn's brother
the whole
and
gang,
his wife. And they had, of course, my two sons were there. And the brother-in-law and his wife brought their two sons as well, 3 years old and 18 months old.
Oh, wow. All right.
There's not a lot of stuff to do at the lake for a 3-month-old.
Wait, do I see where this is going? And is it Ziggy related?
And I am the fun uncle. I am known as the Funko. And so they had, okay, now again, a little bit of rewind. Do you remember back when you and I were young, they had those little things that was on a piece of cardboard, a little gray sheet of plastic. You would draw on it, and then you'd raise the sheet. It would go quack and erase it. Do you remember those
it was the same kind of toy technology of like, not the same type of technology, but it was the same era of like the you draw with the magnets with the little swirls.
Yep, like a Magnadoodle, yes.
Yeah, but you would draw faces on a guy or whatever, wasn't that it?
Or you'd give him curly hair or whatever, or a beard. This was called Magic Slate, and this 3-year-old has the updated version of Magic Slate, which is now digital. And is like a little LED screen.
It's called an iPad.
but it's the basic same no, it's just a very thin piece of plastic. It's a very basic concept, but you draw on it and then you push a button and it disappears. We've got nothing to do. We've already ran around the dining room table 100 times pretending to be trains. Yep. And now we're tired out. We're sitting on the couch and I said, I've got a game for us to play. It's called Help Ziggy. And we start playing this game.
And does the 3-year-old turn to you and go, Fun Uncle, are you referring to the best comic strip of 1975?
Indeed, I am, young sport. Yes. So I first one I do is I draw Ziggy at the bottom of a hole.
Do you have your version of Ziggy saved somewhere that we could put on the Patreon post?
No, unfortunately, you push a button and it's disappeared.
Damn it, I want to see a Brad Geiger Ziggy.
I'll draw you, Ziggy. I've been getting really good at it. I've been drawing them all week long.
The unfortunate part when Brad Geiger draws a pantsless Ziggy is you see way too much than the Wilsons ever intended.
Way more than you wanted to know. And he's so short, too. It just kind of...
Sure. It's like that old joke, and it's deep, too. All right, well, keep going.
So I draw Ziggy down a hole, and I said, Ziggy's in trouble. He's fallen down a hole. And I hand the pen, the stylus, to the 3-year-old, and I say, "You've got to draw something to get him out." Also, there was a video game called Scribblenauts. It was very much like that. So anything that he drew had to. So he would, of course, draw a ladder, and I'd say, "Congratulations, you helped Ziggy." We made a big deal. I hit the button.
A ladder. Great. Okay. Yes, yeah. I get the joke or the game. Yeah, that's fine.
And so then I would draw Ziggy in another situation, and he'd have to draw something to fix the problem. We did this, Dave, for hours and hours. Pretty soon, and he was getting a little too good at it, so then I had to start upping the challenge.
Can I ask you one quick question? At any point to help Ziggy solve a problem, did he introduce a friend for Ziggy?
He did not. He didn't.
So Ziggy? He kept to the spirit of Ziggy. That's great. He kept to the spirit of Ziggy. Yes.
He was absolutely friendless throughout the series.
Sure. Oh, he got the joke. All right, great. Keep going.
But then, like after he was solving them a little too easy, then I said, okay, we're gonna add a new section to the game. I'm gonna call it But Then. So once you solve Ziggy's problem, I'm gonna say, but then a woodpecker flies in and pecks a hole in the ladder. And chops it in half. Now what? So we played Help Ziggy, but then now what? And then I would make terrible things happen to Ziggy, and he'd have to come up with a new idea to get him out or fix the problem. I'm telling you, Dave, Help Ziggy was the star of Thanksgiving, other than the seafood boil, which my wife did, which was amazing. But in terms of that 3-year-old, Help Ziggy was the star of Thanksgiving. Save Thanksgiving for sure. You
might have accidentally or intentionally created a cartoonist that weekend, Brad.
Yeah. Seriously, like he was really into it. It was really fun. Also, it's fun just to see how a 3-year-old's mind works.
Oh yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Like there was one that was so great. I help Ziggy. An angry elephant is charging towards him, and I drew the angry elephant charging towards Ziggy. Now, what are you going to do to help him? He grabs his pen, makes one swift move with his stylus. It's a smile for the elephant's face. He says, well, now the elephant's happy.
Oh, what a great out-of-the-box idea.
Right, because happy elephants don't hurt anybody. Now he's a happy elephant.
Yeah, it's that kind of writing that it actually, to Dave Pilkey's credit, is what makes Dogman so good, is that sometimes the solution is literally just, we move this one inch and now it's fine, you know?
Yep.
And an adult would never write something like that, but kids love it because it's the non sequitur, non-logical. Well, now let me ask you this. When you got tired of playing Let's Help Ziggy, did you do something like, all right, let's help Ziggy. He's suffering from crippling personal debt, but amid joblessness, what are we going to do? How are we going to help Ziggy?
Help Ziggy. Give him a predatory home loan and call it a day.
Exactly. He's got student debt, and he's swimming in debt, in overall indebtedness, and then he just puts a smile on Ziggy, and he's like, Ziggy had a beer, and that's the solution.
Here's a prescription for an antidepressant. Boom.
On that note, I am going to say hello, everybody, and welcome to Comic Lab, the show about making comics.
And making a living from comics. I'm Brad Geiger, the editor of the Webcomics Handbook on Substack and the creator of Evil Inc.
And I'm his friend Dave Kellett, who's enough of a dad where I just want to say, after saying that, alcohol's not a solution, gang. I don't know why I suggested that. There's just enough of a dad in me where I'm like, I can't put that out there like that. That's not...
I can't do that.
I'm the cartoonist of Drive and Sheldon and the co-director of Stripped.
And this week's Hour of Comics Advice is made possible by your support at patreon.com/Comic Lab. So Dave, let's talk comics.
Let's talk comics, my friend. We've got a big show for everybody because this is our end of year show for 2024. Yes. We bid the year goodbye. And in our now, 6-year tradition, Brad?
I believe so.
We will now go through over the following hour all of our predictions writ large and goals writ small for what the world was going to present to us in 2024 and what our personal career goals were in 2024. And I think it should make for a fun hour because there's a lot of stuff. This was a year of some big swings. Some that we got really right and some that we got super wrong. So, Bradley, take us into our first prediction from 2024. What was our first one?
The first prediction I had going into 2024 was that Twitter was going to crash. I said it started crashing in 2023 and it was going to crash in 2024. Obviously, there are still people on Twitter, but as of right now, and you probably know this number because you've been tracking it closer than I do. How many people does Bluesky have at this point?
As of this recording, and we're recording on the morning of December 3rd, I think they're just shy of 24 million.
And they've been on an exponential climb, like a million or so at a time every day, right?
And it has slowed down. But if you look at the history of any social media, there's I don't know whether to describe it other than the peaks sometimes shallow out and then spike back up again and shallow out and spike back. So that's
Plateaus.
Fine. I will talk about this in next week's show, which is our predictions for 2025. But the short version is Bluesky's doing great and the growth has been phenomenal.
Yeah, I'm going to claim a win on that prediction.
Really?
I think at this point we can officially say that Twitter has crashed. There's no way if Twitter was healthy, there's no way Bluesky could be getting this kind of traction.
Right.
I mean, it's not completely crashed, but I'm going to give myself like a 50-50 win. It's not a slam dunk, but I think right now, especially when you see news organizations stopping their posting on Twitter and opening up their accounts on Bluesky, once you see people saying, "Okay, I'm not posting here anymore," a lot of celebrities, a lot of news organizations, and you see the abundance of bots. I think I can safely claim kind of a 50-50 win there.
Yeah, I was going to say you're wrong that I don't think it crashed, but the more you described it, you might be right.
Yeah.
That it was let's put it this way. I will agree with you that it was the beginning of the crash of Twitter in 2024.
Yeah.
And so I will say this in sort of a sad way, in the way that oligarchs always come up as the winner. It kind of did what Musk wanted it to do for him. Yep. But for everyone else, it just had absolutely completely diminished returns on a completely pragmatic basis. It was no longer giving us the links out, and that was confirmed later on that it was intentionally being throttled. And so, as I have said recently publicly, the reason why Bluesky is going to win is that all the interesting, creative people and also the journalists are increasingly on there. So interesting, creative art makers, culture makers are all on Bluesky all of a sudden. And here's why that's important, is that a social media ecosystem, it can exist without that, but there's no new fodder. To have new ideas, new things to talk about, you need the Patton Oswalts and the Stephen Kings and the Brad Geigers and the Dave Kellets and the musicians and the newsmakers. Because if you don't have that base level of creator on a social media platform, there's no new thing to talk about. There's no reaction to talk about, right? You have to link out to some other social media site, which is what's happening on Twitter, to talk about what people are saying on Bluesky. So I will agree with Brad. This is the beginning of the end of Twitter as we've known it.
Yeah. I won't give myself a slam dunk on that, but I'll give what I call a 50-50 win. So, Dave, what was your first prediction for 2024?
So my first prediction was that social media will remain distributed over 5 or 6 platforms in 2024. And I will say that up until November, I was right. I was right up until November. But and to be fair, purely numerically, it's still accurate right now. That it's distributed between 5 or 6 platforms. But I think that it's very telling that both, I never pronounced his name right, Mosseri, that runs Instagram and Threads, and Musk and Zuckerberg are all sort of looking at Bluesky's features and what they offer and what they can in their own limited way try to mirror, because the impetus, the move, the growth spurt is all on Bluesky's side and not at all on Twitter's side and the like. So I do think we're at the beginning of the end of that prediction, even though I think I was right that it did stay distributed for most of 2024.
Well, listen, if I can give myself a 50-50 win on Twitter, we can give you a 50-50 win on the distribution.
That's like saying, Brad, we're
media.
A little bit pregnant. We did it. We solved the crime.
Well, and I mean, just take a moment to take a look at all the things that happened on social media that played into that.
Yes.
For a very short time, we were both very confident that Threads was in the position to take it all.
Yes, because it was theirs to lose. And for a solid 3 weeks there, it was theirs to lose. They had the growth, they had the numbers, and then they repeated Instagram's mistakes of not letting linking out.
That's exactly right.
And of promoting weird nonsense to keep people entranced in their platform, which is ultimately a death knell for a platform, really.
I hope Bluesky's taking note, because that first thing you noted, the outward going links, that has been huge. That's what everybody is really appreciating on Bluesky. And all Threads had to do was let you link out without throttling it. That's all they had to do. And not do, like you said, a bunch of weird stuff to try and keep you on. All they had to do was play it cool, in other words, like Bluesky's doing right now. All they had to do was say, hey, we're in a good spot here. Just keep it steady on. We'll make it good, But they had to rush through the enshittification and go right into another zone, ramp things up, and they lost everybody.
Yeah. And I will say this in terms of one of the fundamental problems with corporate profit reporting is that I know that in a sort of great a slider, Brad, of capitalism, I'm a little bit further towards capitalism than you are, I think.
Yeah.
But even I will admit that quarterly reporting of profits, especially with social media companies, contributes to this kind of problem where they don't allow for links out, because ultimately allowing links out lets the platform grow and grow healthier financially in the long term, but it doesn't give you that juice of profits that everybody wants this quarter. And that's why Instagram and that's why Threads and that's why Twitter start to throttle, because they're like, well, we're going to keep it all on platform. We're going to sell more ads. But ultimately, look what it did to Twitter. It ultimately kills you in the long run, because you're not allowing the creative culture makers to link out.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right about that. So my next prediction for 2024 was that web users will begin to pivot away from social media. Now, I don't think I can give myself a 50-50 win there. I don't think it's happened.
You're not a little bit pregnant again? Okay.
But I will say, if you count Substack, which isn't true social media, Substack has a social media aspect.
It is a little more publishing than social media. Yes. I will grant you that.
Yeah. Well,
but again, a little bit pregnant. It's still social media.
I'm going to give myself a 25-75 win on that one. Maybe just 25% right there, in that if Substack is two things, posts and notes, the post part of Substack is not social media in a truest sense. And that we've seen really make some great strides forward in 2024.
Right.
So that fits it. But like the other stuff that I said in terms of RSS and stuff like that, not so much. Although I will say, and we're going to be talking about this pretty soon, I'm working on something that is outside of social media, and something I've been working on all year, as a matter of fact. But one thing that I'm trying to also say to that group is that they all say, well, nobody uses RSS. And what I say to that is, we have to give them a reason to use RSS. We have to teach them to use RSS. We've got to make it cool again to use RSS. If we wait for people to do it, it's never going to happen. But I think content creators like us, if we start banging the drum again and say, hey, like by the way, how many people under 25 listening to the show right now are right now saying, what the hell is RSS?
Yeah.
So I think we're in fact, that might be one of my predictions coming up, but I think we're in a really good space to be leaders in that and bring it back. I don't think it's going to happen on its own, but I think we can take a leadership position on that.
Yeah, and listen, as much as I was making fun of my friend Brad about trying to say that Substack wasn't social media, let me now come to his defense, because let's talk about the why behind the what on his prediction. He had said web users will begin to pivot away from social media, and the why behind that prediction was social media wasn't working.
Right.
Like, the core thing of what we wanted from social media, which was to share our art, the people that followed us to see our art, and then the ability to actualize or monetize, or any sort of way of pointing them with an outward link to Kickstarter or Patreon or our Comic-Con appearances or to book sales, wasn't happening, right? And so the why behind the what in that prediction was Brad was saying, look, we need something that works, and it's not working. And so he's still right in a way, because Bluesky, one of the reasons why it took off is it answers the why behind that what, right? Of like, none of those platforms were working, but one did. Right. And so everybody flocked to that. So I still think, in a weird roundabout way, Brad is sort of right on that one.
Yeah, a little bit right.
Yeah, a little bit right.
So Dave, your prediction that comes up next had to do with Patreon and their IPO.
Yes, I will admit that I think, Brad, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think I was completely wrong here, because I had predicted, I sort of had sensed in the water, I remember this, that it felt like Patreon was getting closer to announcing their initial public offering for stock, right?
Yeah.
And I genuinely thought it was coming. I thought I saw the sort of corporate moves that you would make 6 months to 9 months ahead of it.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, here it comes. They're getting ready for their public filings, because, you have to do your filings for all sorts are on the federal level. Anyway, didn't happen. Didn't happen. That prediction, I think, is a complete failure. I remain unpregnant, Brad, on that one. So that's...
I've never been so happy to agree with you, and never been so happy to see you miss a prediction, because I think that when Patreon does release its IPO at some point, it will be the beginning of the end. I think that you can see it writing on the wall.
I think it might,
I'm very happy to say that I'm glad that you didn't make that prediction this year.
Yeah, I agree with Brad on that every year that we avoid the IPO, and I don't think it will happen right away, but I think within like 2 or 3 years of the IPO, we'll begin the enshittification process of Patreon. Yeah. And so just keep an eye on that for your own long-term career success. But so I think I was wrong about that. But now, Brad, you had another prediction for 2024. You said Kickstarter will remain #1 by continuing to avoid mentioning the blockchain.
Well, do you remember 2023 when they had that whole kerfuffle about blockchain, and they kind of doubled down on it, and then everybody was getting mad at them, and then there was Kickstarter competitors that were popping up, and we saw a lot of people launch Kickstarter competitors, and some of them that were kind of limping along all of a sudden got some steam behind them, and I said at that time, Kickstarter's going to come out on top on that one. I think they're in a real good position to do that, and the way they're going to do it is that they are never going to say the word blockchain out loud again.
They're never going to. Yeah.
And I think that you can make a really strong argument that did come true. Nobody, thank goodness, nobody in 2024 has said the word blockchain. By the way, not unrelated, nobody has said the word NFT in 2024. Yes. Nobody seriously, you don't see people talking about NFTs in the comics community. You don't see anybody, musical artists, anything. NFTs and blockchain have become such a toxic brand that everybody's just not touching them. Yeah. And one of the beautiful things about 2024, and I think many of us are going to look back on 2024 with like a golden tinge and think, oh, that was a really good year. One of the many reasons for that is going to be NFTs died completely. Yeah. Nobody's touching them.
Yeah, that I think we can safely, for at least 5 years or so of technology iterations, we can at least say NFTs is not going to be coming back in a big way. Yeah. And great. But I also will say this about Brad's prediction that Kickstarter will remain #1 by not mentioning blockchain. The key part about that is mentioning blockchain.
Yeah.
I don't
they may
know.
still be
Brad
doing
doesn't know. And even though they're a public benefit corporation, I don't know that the public knows. They might be incorporating blockchain into their system. I don't know.
Sure could.
My little suspicion for a lot of us going forward, and we'll talk about this next week in the prediction show, you're going to see a lot of companies incorporating blockchain and incorporating AI and then never telling you because they know what a sour egg that is in terms of publicity, but they're going to use it on whatever specific tool system they're wanting to use it for. They're just not going to mention it. And it will slip out eventually in a public filing or in some disgruntled employee, and people will have a big kerfuffle. But I think that's how it's going to be adopted going forward, is in secret, honestly.
Yeah. Oh, and particularly blockchain, because think about it. There's no reason to talk about that, right? And for example, and by the way, I'm going to show my ignorance here. So you folks that are listening that know this stuff, just give me some leeway here. But up until 2023, we didn't know how Kickstarter was coded.
No, I didn't. You're right. You're right.
Was it C++? Was it Perl? Was it HTML? CSS?
Was Ruby on Rails? I had no idea. I had no idea what it was.
Yeah. JavaScript? No, we didn't know. And we were blessedly ignorant. As
smiling
I am right
and happy
now.
to use Kickstarter. Yep.
Without knowing how it was coded, and that's going to be how blockchain, if it ever comes back, we're going to just find out years later, oh yeah, we incorporated that blockchain stuff. Not a big deal. It's been running in the background. You guys didn't even notice, or, we just avoided it completely.
Yeah.
But nobody's going to say that thing out loud again.
No, I think that's, we'll talk about it next week with predictions, but I hugely agree with you. So I had one last prediction for 2024, Brad, that I'll talk about before we move into our goals for 2024. And that was this, and that's very specific to San Diego, but my prediction was that San Diego Comic-Con will return to normal after a hugely abnormal 2023, which was the Hollywood strike year. And I personally predicted that profits will plummet for creators. And it's interesting that I used the word plummet. The good news, gang, it didn't plummet. It actually didn't plummet, but it absolutely dropped as predicted. And I should have looked up my numbers before we came on, but oh, you weren't there for this Comic-Con. I feel like it was somewhere in the 5 to 10% drop range. Does that feel right for what I said at the time? I don't remember. Okay,
so here's what I remember. You said it dropped, but it was still a little bit of an uptick over 2022.
That's right, it was. That's right, yes. So that is true. So in a way, it was sort of like, I'll take that kind of loss because it still represents an upward trajectory overall for Comic-Con. So, 23 was absolutely an aberration. But here's another thing to mention offhandedly. Having gone to the most recent Comic-Cons post-COVID, I will say that the 2024 San Diego Comic-Con felt the most normal, quote unquote, in a post-COVID world. You know what I mean?
Okay. Yep,
there were still masks and everybody was respectful of it. And everybody, for people that had masks, it was not a big deal as it should be. But I think it was the year that sort of that final tinge of fear kind of went away in terms of Comic-Cons, I think. And maybe that's just me speaking for others. I don't know.
No, I think that's fair to say. I think that's absolutely fair to say. But in terms of the prediction, I think that's another one that we don't have a clear winner because basically because of the word plummet. It did plummet from what it was in 2023, but it was still up from 2022.
Yeah.
So like that one is hard to make a call on. You were kind of right and you were kind of wrong, and kind of happy to be there too.
And frankly was happy to be wrong-ish. I was happy with the profits that I had for Comic-Con this year. And honestly, it's one of those things where for any of you that look at graphs a lot, if you pull out on the graph far enough, it would still be seen as an upward trajectory. You kind of wouldn't even really see the blip of 2023. So anyway, so overall, I continue to have high hopes for Comic-Con going forward. I continue to love going, but again, it's a local quote unquote show for me, so I don't necessarily recommend it for anybody else. Anyway, that being said, let's jump into what our goals for 2024, Brad. This is sort of fun for people to hear too, is what Brad and I had set out for ourselves and our own career, and whether or not we did it. Oh, God.
Hey, if you're listening while you work, take a minute to stand and stretch.
And while you're doing that, we're going to tell you why you should join us on Patreon.
When you do, you're going to get hours and hours of podcasts that we've recorded just for backers.
And exclusive Patreon posts that go even deeper on Comic Lab topics.
And access to our exclusive Discord server, which is a thriving community of professional cartoonists.
So you can support the show you love and get tons of actionable resources for your own cartooning.
And listen, if you can't swing a pledge this month, we get it. No worries.
Yeah, listen, you can still support the show by rating us wherever you get your podcasts.
Just leave a 5-star review and a few kind words.
That, along with mentions on social media, is incredibly helpful.
Now, everybody, let's talk comics.
Well, the first on the list here, and I think you're going to start strong on this one. Your goal was to launch Pickles Kickstarter in January or February and launch Drive 4 Kickstarter in the summer. And I think you knocked it out of the park, did you not?
I think I did. Beth and I were able to kickstart 2 books in 2024. I was very happy with the results of it. Pickles was a delightful sort of new Sheldon book, but with the theme around my character of Pickles. And I was happy. The physical quality of that book came out lovely.
Yeah.
I think it ended up around $34,000 for that Kickstarter. And so I was very happy about that. And then the second one in the year was the Drive 4 book, Drive Act 4. And that one kickstarted, I think, was it late summer? I don't remember. It was, I would call it midsummer, but yeah. And that one was either 128 or 129,000. So between the two of them, great. You know, coupled with Patreon and a strong San Diego, it was a good year for the studio. So I was very happy with those two for the year. Yep, I'd say you hit your goal easily. My first goal of the show was in Q1, I wanted to kickstart an Evil Inc. book paired with an After Dark edition. So basically, I did 2 versions of the same book, a safe for work and a not safe for work. Right. Which I did. I accomplished. It turned out really well. Yes, I was super happy. As a proud owner of the set, I was very happy for my friend. I appreciate that. The second part of that goal, unfortunately, was to kickstart a second book in the year, either the Webcomics Handbook, second edition, or a dedicated After Dark collection, or a collection of single panel comics sometime in Q3. I still want that for you so bad. I still want the single panel ones. And that did not happen. And actually, we've got a question coming into the show saying, you know, how do I do 2 Kickstarters in 1 year? And I got to tell you, I think part of the answer to that is to have a Beth in your life, to have an assistant like Dave has, who knows how. You could tell Beth just to run a Kickstarter and then to come back in 3 months and ask her how it went, and it would be fine. She could do this. She knows everything at the 7-year mark now, which I think how long she's been with me. Yes, probably. I could probably say, run this entire thing start to finish. It's been lovely. And it is honestly the core reason why I first hired an assistant 10 or 15 years ago, was because as kids came along, I found that I really couldn't kickstart the 2 books a year that I was used to doing. And I needed someone else, frankly, to help me with it. But it's, for me and the financials of the studio, it's worth it to have a second pair of eyes and a second set of hands making things happen. And so, I agree with you that's the way that I made it happen. Yeah. But if you're trying to do 2 Kickstarters in 1 year and you don't have that, and if you don't have the headspace, the organizational space, the amount of time to dedicate to that, I think it's a real uphill climb. Well, and it's also it's planning, because I'm planning out, if I'm being honest about it, my 2026 Kickstarters right now. Not like hardcore in the trenches, but like I'm planning them out in terms of how I will tackle it, when I will tackle it, what the page count will be. So you've got to start working ahead. It's not just snap your fingers and you've got a book to kickstart. Right. It's a 6 to 18 to maybe 24 month process of planning it out, don't you think? Absolutely. Yeah, because if you listen to the past several predictions and goals shows, you've heard me make a prediction of 2 books in the same year in the last 3 years.
and I haven't done it yet.
You did do it this year. Wink.
Well, those don't. I don't count those because it was basically the same book, and it was the same Kickstarter. I didn't do two Kickstarters. As much as I appreciate that, not really. But and by the way, I'm no slouch. I'm pretty good at this. I'm good at time management.
Yes.
I'm good at Kickstarters. It's not like I'm running at a deficit. It's just that being able to get the time and the headspace to do 2 Kickstarters in a year has been more than I've been able to pull off in the past 3 years.
Well, I will turn that around into a compliment, because I think what you do versus what I do is, I think you could do 2 Kickstarters in a year, but you very capably schedule out your week to keep your Patreon absolutely full and contented. And I don't do that. I lean a little bit more towards Kickstarter. You lean your career a little bit more towards Patreon.
Yeah.
And that's fine. That's a compliment to you. You do that very well. So don't beat yourself up too much is what I'm saying,
Yeah. No, that's actually, I'm glad you said that, because it does make me feel better.
Yeah.
Because that's something that's always been under my skin. It's like, doggone it, I tried it again and it didn't work.
Yeah, we just run a slightly different campaign, and that's fine.
Yeah.
Or not campaign, a career, and that's fine,
So what was your next goal for 2024?
So I had a goal in the sense that one should always be prepared. I had a goal to be prepared for a 5 to 15% sales drop at Comic-Con International. And I think because I was prepared for a 15% drop, I not overworked, but I intentionally juiced my sales for this year by having a bunch of new pins, an entirely new way to sell pins. I even built new things for my booth for, I don't know if I showed them to you.
You did.
For presenting pins I was very proud of. And so I think that helped diminish the potential drop, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? By preparing for the worst and truly preparing, I made it not so bad, I think is one way of saying it.
Yep. And by I remember you leaning hard into that stuff with everything you just got done saying, and reorganizing your booth layout. And I'll just take the mention this because every time you mention your booth layout, we get some of our listeners write in and say, "Oh, could I see pictures of what you did? I want to see your strategy. I want to see what you've done." And you have always, every time you go on this subject, you've done very kindly on Patreon posts where you show the photos of the booth layout and talk about why you did certain things and how things are positioned. Right. So if you are interested in that, you can join us on patreon.com/comiclab and see all of Dave's.
Yeah, just search for Comic-Con or photos or that kind of thing. Yeah. Yeah. And in so doing, you help keeping Brad from just giving me more work there. Thanks, Brad.
Well, you help us get to one of those goals that we're going to be talking about shortly. Right.
Well, so you had a similar goal, not a similar, but a related goal about personal appearances in 24, if I remember. If I'm being honest, had a really great time at the NCS and had in 2023. And I said, I'm going to start loosening up a little bit about personal appearances and maybe not necessarily going to comic conventions, but I had some personal appearances that I had in mind for 2024, including San Diego and the NCS. I think I might have been spitballing at that time Alaska Comic Camp. If we were in January, it might have been still during the time I was kind of thinking on that. And also, there is an adult industry convention that comes into New Jersey in November. And I remember saying either on the air or off the air that I'd really like to experiment with a booth there. And I'd actually priced it out, and it was a little pricey, but not outside of my range. It does let you know, income disparities industry by industry when you price out another industry. You're like, yikes, these are expensive. Yeah. They clearly make way more money than I would normally make,
They're making bank.
But maybe, Brad, that's one of those situations where you have to believe in yourself and roll the dice once.
Yep.
And see if you can make it work. I think you might be able to, ?
At the point that I would have needed to have pulled the trigger, I wasn't 100% sure I was going to be in a place with Kickstarter fulfillment to do that. So
and it's also one of those cases where whenever you come up to the month where you have to pay that booth fee, you're like, I actually need this money right now. I can't have this delayed financial gratification for 6 to 9 months until the show actually happens, you know?
Yeah. No, yeah, that's exactly how it works. But the adult industry convention kind of plays into something I've said a long time, is that I don't think I'm going to be doing a whole lot of comic conventions ever again. But if you told me I could go to a trade show or a convention and be the only comic on the floor, that's the one that I would do. And
because then you're the special little snowflake. You're different than every other booth.
Yes,
you know?
You're unique. So
Although you might find, let's just talk about this. Having one time had a booth at San Diego Comic-Con that was across from, I think, Playboy Playmates. Remember that?
Yes,
the year we had that?
That happened to me at Wizard World, Philadelphia.
Yeah. If you ever want to experience nobody looking at your booth, men, women, adults, children, nobody looking at your booth, be across from the Playboy Playmates, because every neck turned one way and away from Dave Kellett at that booth.
Yeah. We had lifelong friends that told us at the end of the show, I was looking for you all week.
Yeah, that's right. And we were like, you were standing right in front of the booth. I saw you. Oh, I didn't see you.
Oh, yeah, I saw you.
I didn't see hide nor hair of you, Brad. I'm so sorry. Yeah.
No, we didn't see hide nor hair, but we saw his ass right over there. That's the only part of him we saw, his backside. Yeah. It was hysterical. That might be, I might get speaking of keisters, might get mine handed to me that week. But I do. So out of those 4, I did one, which was NCS, which we had a blast.
That was really fun.
That was a personal appearance I didn't regret a bit, but the other ones I took a pass on.
And I will say, in a way that I hope, I'm putting this out in the universe, I hope it goes forward, because we've had 2 years in a row where we've led panel discussions at Comic-Con under the Comic Lab rubric. And gosh, it's been fun to do. And I hope we can keep doing it. That's the kind of thing that I would love to be doing 20 years from now with you.
Yes. No, I'd love for that to be an NCS tradition, because not only do I think it was a lot of fun, but I think we brought a certain type of quality to that.
Yes.
You know, I think
we toot our own horn.
Not for nothing. I think we had a really great group of people. We talked about interesting things. You know, I think we brought our A game, and I'd love to keep doing it.
And listen, this is not the 2025 prediction show, but I will say this. If you're thinking about it, it's in Boston this coming year. So if you're on the East Coast and maybe within a short travel distance of Boston, think about coming to the NCS Rubens in summer. When is it?
Oh, I should know it off the top of my head.
Anyway, a quick Google will do you good there. It's worth a Google.
Google it.
Google it. And anyway, Brad and I will hopefully be there again this year with the Comic Lab panel. I will say this, another goal that I had for 2024, Brad, that
speaking of putting things into the universe.
I failed miserably at this one, is our shared joy goal of Comic Lab across America.
Yes.
Where Brad Geiger and Dave Kellett rent a moderately priced RV and drive across America with a bunch of books and sign and do a bunch of talking and speaking engagements.
Yeah.
And I went to AAA, which in America is the American Automobile Association, and I got a bunch of maps. And Brad and I in San Diego unfolded a bunch of maps, and we said, here's the route we could take. Oh, look at this is great. And then we did nothing about it, because I think, honestly, Brad, until our kids are a little bit more out of, and I don't want to say this in any way other than causality, until our kids are a little bit more out of our life, we kind of have a responsibility to be there with them, travel with them, continue to go and see things with them. I don't know that you and I can say to our families, see you for a week and a half. I'm going with my pal Brad,
Yeah. And I'm telling you, the more I looked at that map, the more I was like, there's no way we can do it in a week and a half.
I know it might take 2 weeks to do, or maybe more, to do the route of America that we really want to do.
Yeah. Or we might have to chop it up and do a West Coast tour one year and an East Coast tour another year.
Yeah.
And then figure something out for the Midwest.
the Midwest, we wave out the window as we fly over.
Hey, everybody.
It's true. I really want it, is the short version, but boy, we just weren't able to make it happen this year. I really want it though.
Yeah,
but if anyway, Danielle Corsetto has been very kind in guiding us and she had a nice conversation with Brad about how she did it for Girls with Slingshots. Really helpful. I've talked with other people that did it for a D&D thing that they were doing. That was really helpful. And still, it's both money, logistics, and time. It's just going to be tricky. I don't know how we will get that on the books in the years ahead.
Yeah. Well, we're going to try. We're going to try. It's not dead yet.
Yes.
It's not dead yet.
Yes.
So my next goal for 2024 was to use non-social media alternatives to drive Patreon. I don't want to get too much into it because, well, I want to talk about it in an upcoming show as well, because I've got a whole lot there to discuss. But I will say I'm going to chalk that one up as a moderate win for me, because the thing that I was talking about specifically was in January of 2024, I said, I've got this plan to do a different, to bring back the idea of web rings with an updated spin, with kind of a new flair. And I said that in January. Today is December 3rd, and I launched this project yesterday.
By God, he did it, ladies and gentlemen. Hey, I'm proud of you.
Oh, it took more coding than I ever thought. I had to bring somebody in to help with the coding. It took a lot of herding people. You know how it is when you got to herd creative people.
It's herding cats. It's literally herding cats. Yes.
Yeah. Get everybody pointed in the same direction. So if you go, this is an NSFW venture, so be forewarned. But if you go to spicerackcomics.com, you'll see everybody that I grouped together for this opening salvo. And what it is, everybody in that group does adult comics. They all have websites, and they're all running what accounts basically is an ad for one member all week. And then next week, it's another member. So everybody gets in the promo box for 1 week. So if you're doing a Kickstarter or whatever, also, you don't have to worry about somebody that just updates twice a week, right? Then you miss that day. So everybody gets a week. Everybody goes into rotation. And then also, I've built into that kind of like bringing back the old idea of comics collectives. Right. And that's I'm not on the cutting edge of that.
No, you're on the 24-year cutting edge of that one. Yeah.
Well, I mean, first there was Keen Spot and Modern Tales, but even after that, there's been a number of other collectives out there.
Oh, yeah.
But I wanted to build that in too, and say, because when I look at my Patreon numbers, of course, the two things I see that bring me the most Patreon backers is my website and content exchanges.
Really?
So,
yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
65%, that's that one questionnaire I send them. 65% say I found out about your Patreon through the website. 4.7% said I found out about you through a Patreon content exchange. And then the rest is like 2%.
I wish you could have been more specific in pulling those numbers out of your memory. That was amazing.
Well, I've been doing social media for Spice Rack all day yesterday. So I had, because it's like, hey, this is why we're doing it. But yeah, so I'm encouraging this group to think as a collective, to think as a collaboration, to do cross promotion, to do any number of things that we can go right back to 2001, where we had to share audience members. When you actually, somebody stumbled into Greystone Inn and discovered what a webcomic was, I wanted to make sure I could pass that person on to Dave.
Yes.
And Dave wanted to pass them on to Scott, and so on and so forth. We found that person. Now we have to share that person. And
right.
We're getting back to those days where we're, especially for adult comics and what we're going to be facing, it looks like in 2024, we got a lot of stuff stacked up against us. So this is the time to start circling the wagons, as it were.
Yeah.
And we took our first big step. There's going to be a lot. In fact, there's already one little dust up I've got to solve there later today in terms of we're getting already flagged by ad blockers. We got to deal with that. But in general, I started this non-social media project that, by the way, also uses social media. Don't get it wrong. You'll find us on Bluesky for sure. But I pulled the trigger yesterday, and as of today, 24 hours later, I'm very, very upbeat and optimistic about it.
Well, in a show where we review our goals, I have to say, I think this was the biggest swing and the biggest win for both of us in 2024, because anytime one of us, and this has happened over 24 years of cartooning online, anytime one of us truly tries something new, it is the hardest thing to have done that year.
Yeah.
The new thing, like I could do another book tomorrow if I had to. I could do another, I don't know, even if I did another documentary tomorrow, I would know how to do it.
Yeah.
This is you starting cold and figuring a thing out. And I applaud you as a friend. And you can, listeners at home, you can bet your bippy I'm watching this thing like a hawk, because if it works, I'm absolutely lifting the entire idea wholesale and creating a sci-fi web ring for Drive. So yes, so kudos to Brad, and also I'm watching him like a hawk, as should we all, because we should all be keeping our head on a swivel, watching when people are experimenting. You know,
I'm glad you brought that up, because I was going to suggest it. I think in 2024, one thing I really want to see people lean into is this idea of not necessarily a collective like KeenSpot was, or not a collective that if you want to do a book, you've got to go through the collective, but a loose collaboration group, that kind of collective, very similar to what Spice Track is, where you got a group of people, and a group of sci-fi cartoonists would be perfect, that you all do collaborative cross-promotional efforts. I think this is something that's going to be very helpful in the year to come.
And I can think of about 5 sci-fi independent creators online in a snap of a finger.
And I got news for you.
Yeah, what?
The guy I brought in to code how this thing works, like especially with the banner ads, it was less expensive if I agreed to let him make it open source. So the online dashboard that I'm running all of this from is open source. You can have it. You can get it. It's there, because that was better for Cheapy McGee here.
Guys, here's when I say on the show, you are about to witness a friend completely steal from another friend.
Yes.
And I am going to wholesale steal from Brad Geiger. He is like, listen, you know those things where Bugs Bunny would take everything out of a room and there'd be like one little teacup spinning, that's all that's left? I'm about to steal from Brad Geiger wholesale. He's going to have nothing left when I'm done. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be thrilled to see that happen.
Well, no, okay, so let me move on to my next goal for 2024. And I am personally going to call this one a big L. This one my goal was to revisit Kindle Direct Publishing. And I actually don't remember was this me having already established my footprint on Kindle and then coming back to it? Or was this me saying, I really am going to make a push for it?
I think it was, so we had just gotten back from the NCS the year before, and we had heard that presentation. We were both fired up about it. I think we had started to dip our toes into it, and I think I remember you in particular saying, I'm going to give it 1 year. I'm going to give it a good 12-month try, and then see what happens.
Well, okay, so let me give everybody the big scoop, which was Anders McMeal, in honestly the kindest way possible, shared a lot of data at the NCS about their approach with Kindle. Not only did they share data, they basically share best practices and how-tos. It was like, I have not witnessed that specific thing from a corporation in a long time, where they're like, we did it and so can you, and here's how. And I was like, what? Why are you sharing this?
And here's some screenshots of our dashboard, and here's some real numbers. You cannot fault them. They were doing wonderful efforts there.
Honest to God,
work.
I say this in friendship. They were doing the Lord's work. That is exactly what you would want out of kind humans, and they were doing a very big kindness. And so Brad and I came home and said, holy hell, we got to get on Kindle Direct Publishing. And we did. And listen, is Amazon a hot mess when it comes to the back end of their coding? Absolutely. Are they a hot mess when it comes to the moderation because they're under a deluge of AI submitted and AI created books? Absolutely. Does it take forever to solve even moderate problems on Kindle? Absolutely it does. But financially, is it worth it to have done it once you did it all? No, not at all. It's a hot mess. It didn't pay off at all. So here's the thing. It was way more effort than it was worth it to set it up. But now I have to say, I have to be honest about this. Now that we've set it up, it's a not zero-sum amount of money coming in every month for my books. And I think as the sort of algorithmic links grow between my books and other books, and by that I mean as more and more people on Kindle Direct say, hey, you just bought Calvin and Hobbes, you might be interested in Sheldon.
Right. As
those kind of algorithmic links grow a little bit more, and that might take 2 or 3 years, I think it might get up to serious money, which I would say to be about $6,000 a year. I think right now it's more like $1,000 a year if the wind is blowing right, you know?
Yeah.
But I'll take $1,000 a year now that it's set it and forget it. Fine, that's great. I'll tell you what I have since done. After the 6-month period where you're supposed to take down your ebooks on your own site, I absolutely put my ebooks back on my own site because shine Amazon.
Yeah.
And I will say this. I don't think Andrews McMeel led us astray in their success on Kindle Direct. I think what happened, Brad, is they have Peanuts and Calvin and Hobbes and Garfield and For Better or For Worse. Of course, their link juice is going to be great between their books because they've got the biggest hitters of all time. I mean, in all likelihood, Bill Watterson's still probably moving, I don't know, 10 million books a year? I don't even know.
Easily.
So, of course, he's going to be doing great on Kindle Direct Publishing. All of which to say is, I did revisit Kindle Direct Publishing, as was my goal in 2024. And unfortunately, it was one of those things that just didn't pay off in a way that I hoped it would.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to stop it. It's still bringing in, something. It pays for the server fees, I guess, for the years, if you want to look at it that way. So I don't recommend it for you necessarily, but I will say, having done it, I'm glad I did it, and I'm glad it's on there, even though it's not huge money.
And I'll just tease a little bit. I'm not going to talk about KDP for my goals for this year, but when we do our show next week about predictions and goals for 2025, you're going to hear me say KDP, and it's not going to be discontinuing.
Oh, all right.
There's a little something to get you to tune in.
That's a weird nebulous sneak peek, everybody. Yeah. So I'm going to mention the thing, and the thing will have been mentioned.
And it's not going to be, I won't be doing it, so it's going to be...
I'm doing it. Interesting.
Yes.
Because Brad, like I, had a lot of moderation issues, whereas I think Amazon flagged me as an AI submitting book system for a minute, and I got flagged as that. I was like, listen, I'm a human. Here's my website. You can call me at this number and talk to me. And then eventually and I think Brad a little bit got flagged for other reasons under Kindle system. But once you get past it, my goal is for it to be set it and forget it. And literally it's $1,000 plus every year for not doing a damn lick of work,
Yeah, no, that's what you want. That's what you want for something like that. So my last goal for 2024 was to start prepping my websites for a post-Patreon future. I think at that point we were expecting that IPO to come down the hill, and that we would have to start improvising a little bit on that, because obviously once that IPO gets released, or shortly before the IPO gets released in preparation, people that do NSFW work are most likely going to get shuttled right off of that site. They're going to either clear us out to make the IPO attractive, or once they do the IPO, they're going to clear us out because the shareholders, NSFW work makes them skittish, and they'll want to please their shareholders. So I was planning for a post-Patreon future on my websites. I'm happy to say that goal did not come to pass, because since that goal did not come to pass, the only reason for that was that Patreon hung tough for another 12 months, and that made me very happy. I didn't do that unless I had to do it. It might still happen in 2025, but I'm very happy not to have reached that goal.
Well, that's a good way to say that, my friend. That's a good way to say it. So I will say that no real additive to that one on my part. So I will talk about my last Kickstarter goal for the year.
Yeah.
And this one was also a loss, my friend. And it was for Comic Lab. I specifically, for my 50th birthday, wanted to get Comic Lab Patreon to 500 members.
Yeah.
And now here we are at December 3rd, and we did not get 500 members, friends. And I can only say that the failure is on my part. My lilting, delightful tones, my my insider pro advice, my friendship that I offered in spades, alas, did not convince 500 of my chums to join us. So the fault is mine. It's only in mine. It's only in mine, Brad.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm going to take a different tact.
Okay.
Were you not entertained? Oh my God. When you look back at the shows, with the 52 shows we did this year, plus the pro tips, were you not entertained? And to let poor young Davy Kellett down on his 50th birthday. But listen, it'll always be there. We can still shoot for 500 next year in 2025. But yes, unfortunately, that was one that did not come to pass.
Yes. But here's the thing, fans. Here is the thing. you can still jump in over at patreon.com/Comic Lab. And I'll tell you what, it is worth it. You get, 300, 400 extra pro tips, writer's room, and deep dive episodes. And you'll get access to the Discord server. It is a damn delight of a community. We genuinely have a sharing of best practices and best ideas wins on the Discord server, where some people out of nowhere will come up with an idea and 100 people will chime in being like, that's brilliant. Why did no one think of that? Yeah. And within a month or two, we'll all have implemented it. So it is absolutely a great place for pro-ams, for amateurs and pros. And we invite you to join us over at patreon.com/Comic Lab.
Absolutely. And when you do, you'll hear all of those shows early. In fact, our Patreon backers got this show earlier this Saturday. And they were able to know exactly at what time during the podcast I was going to say you've been listening to Comic Lab, the show about making comics and making a living from comics.
Your hosts have been my 2024 delightful little angel, Brad Geiger. He's been the editor of webcomics.com, the creator of evilcomic.com, the creator of Evil Inc. at evilcomic.com, and the new progenitor now I don't know the URL yet. Is it spicerackcomics.com?
That's right.
And you can also find him because of all the kerfuffles of 2024 over on Substack. You can find him on Bluesky. That's right. Gang, you need to seek him out because he's a dang delight of a human being.
That's right. And my friend who I'm looking forward to spending 2025 with, Dave Kellett, the co-director of the comics documentary Stripped and the cartoonist of Sheldon at sheldoncomics.com and Drive at drivecomics.com.
And the Comic Lab theme song is used with permission from Andy Creighton at theworldrecord.net. And a huge thank you for a wonderful 2024 goes out to Matt Woodard of Woodsong Productions, who edited so beautifully every episode this year. He is found over at www.woodsong.media.
If you love Comic Lab, you can rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts, and you can give us a 5-star review on Spotify. If you do send us a review, you may even hear us read it on the show like I'm about to do right now. This one comes in from Garth, who says, under the heading of Sublime Sequentialists.
Ooh!
Isn't that great?
That's lovely.
You wait till you see this art. Comic Lab is everything a podcast could hope to be. Informative, entertaining, engaging, professional, absurd, and regular. Brad Geiger and the notable Dave Kellett. Notable Dave Kellett.
That's
wonderful.
Hello.
Are a font of comic knowledge, and anyone who wants to seriously get their toes into the world of making comics should pay them heed. They're also delightfully entertaining, real voices for radio, so you don't even have to give a fig about comics. You're in for an auditory treat. Give them a listen and follow their advice. They know what they're about.
Wow, that was one of the nicest reviews we've ever gotten.
Yes, isn't that great?
I was genuinely chuffed by that. That was really nice. And I have to say, we've never been called regular before, so anytime someone favorably compares me to Fiber, I'm all for it. I think that's great.
Now that we're post 50, any amount of regularity is good.
Well, hey, gang, tune in next week when my goals for 2025 are take in more fiber. All right, here we go.
Yes.
But in all seriousness, do check us out next week. It's going to be our big predictions and goals for 2025.
Yeah.
It is probably going to be one of the more exciting conversations we have this year because there's a lot coming down the pipe, so we need to start planning for it. And so we will see you next week, friends. Thanks so much. So, Brad, I got to share this one thing with you. Speaking of that, the last time I went to my doctor's annual physical, he was like, yeah, at 50, you probably want to start taking in more fiber. And I was like, oh, how do I take in more fiber? He's like, well, you can eat X, Y, Z. He goes, but another easy solution is just Metamucil. They have these little capsules you can swallow with water. And bada bing, bada boom, Bob's your uncle. There you go. And so I bought the capsulized Metamucil, Brad. Yeah. And no one told me how many to take. So I was just like, I was like, I don't know. What seems appropriate for a guy my size? I don't know. And so the first times I took like 5 or 6 Metamucil capsules, not knowing.
Oh my God.
Because I was like, okay, this represents like a piece of bread, surely, or something.
Yeah.
Oh my God, Brad! The results were not what you wanted. I'm not gonna get into high detail, but let's just say, everyone at home, you need to know Dave Kellett made a horrible mistake. a horrible, horrible mistake that he paid for upwards of 2 to 3 days. It was a horrible mistake,
really?
Brad
It
Geiger.
went on for days?
Brad, when I say I came out looking like one of those gazelles that, like, you know, the little legs that go boing, boing, boing? That was the total weight mass of Dave Kellett by the end of this 3-day period, was the leg of a gazelle,
God.
Brad.
I didn't know Metamucil was so strong.
Neither did I when I took 6 tablets for 3 days. Oh.
Wait till Dave finds out it's not a suppository.